G'day folks, it's Laura here, and today I'd like to share with you my process for creating this wildlife painting of a juvenile black-fronted dotterel on an acrylic pour background. So I usually start my paintings once I've got the acrylic pour background selected. I start by choosing out a photo that I've taken, and this particular photo was taken last year in the semi-arid zone in Australia. So there was a small wetland area and a lot of the water birds flock in to utilize that wetland. So this was my inspirational photo, but you can see that the colors in this photo are quite a lot different to this background. But in choosing the bird to fit the background, I deliberately chose something that had similar kinds of hues within the bird itself. So I start this painting by outlining the eye and the beak. These are the most detailed parts of this painting, so I need to make sure that I get them right. Just adding some color into the skin around the eye as well as the beak itself. It's quite a highlight in this painting, being a little bit red. Adding the feathers around the head and trying to add a little bit of detail there. Adding the breast feathers and trying to get some subtle tones into those sections. While doing this, I'm keeping the color scheme of the painting similar to the tones in the background. Here I'm adding the first layers of the wings and tail feathers and back feathers, and I'll need to build these up quite a lot with a number of layers because the paint itself is a little bit translucent. Here I'm adding some of the detail. This is a black-fronted dotterel, but it's a juvenile, and so the details of its black front, the markings, are actually quite subtle in the juvenile, and so I need to make them not stand out quite as much. Adding some details around the face and around the breast area and some feather details. This is my favorite part of the painting, is adding those feather details and making the bird look quite soft. Adding some shadows and some highlights on those wings. And here I'm going over again the tail feathers and the back and wing feathers to try and increase the opacity and provide a little bit more distinction between those feathers, a little bit more detail in terms of the edges of those feathers, and also doing some layering using some glazes to improve the color rendition of those feathers. So as you can see, the paint actually takes a little while to dry. This is a time lapse that's been sped up quite a lot, so the paint is actually drying as you watch the time lapse. Just adding the leg details here, I decided that I'd made a mistake with that behind leg, and so changed the part where it actually joins to the body. And here I'm adding a little bit of detail to those legs and the reflections in the water below. Decided to add a bit of a shadow for the bird, and then finally adding some more of those feather details and some glazing to improve the color rendition. Just increasing the contrast in those feathers and giving a little bit of an outline to the bird so it stands out from its background. Here you can see the background overall, and this was an acrylic pour painting. I like to try and blend my wildlife paintings a little bit into their background, so that's what I'm doing here, is trying to add a few little waves on top of the shadow effect that I'd added a little bit earlier. I will come back to these waves, so I'm integrating these kind of wave effects with the elements that are already present in the background here. So you can see some of the cells that came through with the acrylic pour effect, and I'm just enhancing and extending those lines and those cells to make them look a little bit more like bubbles that could potentially be occurring in a stylized version of an ocean shore, let's say, or a beach. And I've just added some metallics. So here's the finished painting, just zooming out on the entire painting from the bird through to the background. Now, as I mentioned, this is an acrylic pour background, and I've tried to integrate the bird just a little bit in its background, as you can see with the waves in the foreground here. And for this particular photo, I had a lot of light shining on this painting, which means the metallic effects are very visible. When you see the painting in real life, you tend to see the metallic effects only on certain angles with certain lighting. So here's the overall painting, as you can see. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please let me know what you think in the comments.